It's time for this week's parting shots.
Well, look at Arizona basketball taking a stand against losing. Zona fired coach Sean Miller Wednesday, 6 months after many expected 5 Level 1 NCAA violations to end his tenure, and almost 4 years after Miller was accused of providing $10,000 per month to recruit DeAndre Ayton. But here's what else happened since 2017. Miller's 3 worst Pac-12 finishes since he came to Tucson in 2009. It's amazing how college sports programs do the right thing after being embarrassed on the field of play. In 2005, Colorado fired football coach Gary Barnett after the Buffaloes were trounced 70-3 in the Big 12 championship game. This, of course, was almost 2 years after Barnett responded to an allegation from former kicker Katie Nida that she was sexually assaulted while on the team by denying he knew about it, then dismissively saying she was a bad kicker. We might be seeing something similar play out at LSU, where an investigation into sexual misconduct by a previous head coach was buried for years, and the program and its current head coach allegedly ignored a sexual assault allegation against a former player. The previous head coach, Les Miles, has since moved on to Kansas, but he was fired because of these allegations after his team went 0-9 last season. It remains to be seen what will happen to Ed Ogeron at LSU or basketball coach Will Wade, caught in the same scandal as Sean Miller. But that decision will be based on the standings, not on what's right.
The Astros cheated. This isn't even debatable. The team was fined and lost draft picks, and a couple of guys lost their jobs. Not the players, though. The players who cheated escaped punishment. Now fans are back at the ballparks and seizing the opportunity to heckle baseball's bad boys. On Monday in Anaheim, there were boos and even an inflatable trash can thrown on the field. Then a real trash can, which is something I'm not endorsing. But after the game, Houston manager Dusty Baker, who was not with the franchise for the cheating, went into disappointed dad mode, scolding the fans with the equivalent of, "Who among us hasn't cheated? It's a sad day for America, and my personal favorite, what about the children?" Sorry, Dusty, you don't get to bang the bad example trash can here. Your guys, the ones remaining anyway, weren't worried about moral compasses, the country, or the kids when they scammed their way to a World Series. What Baker should have done and should do going forward is tip his cap to the trolling. Recognize that the best part about being a fan is loudly and passionately defending a side, and appreciate the investment those fans are still making in his sport, especially when Forbes estimates MLB lost $1 billion in 2020, in part because ballparks remained empty and quiet. The Astros escaped ridicule last season, but fans don't forget. And trying to make them the bad guys here, well, that is trash.
Anyone who's already celebrating the end of this pandemic, beware, as there's still time left on the clock and victory is assured to none of us. For proof that competition against the virus is still ongoing, look no further than the Vancouver Canucks. 25 people, including players and staff, have tested positive for the virus in the last 12 days. It's a variant at play, and symptoms are intense. I was told last weekend that there were a few players in, quote, rough shape. Fatigue, headaches, dehydration. Some guys were having a hard time getting out of bed. At least one player required an IV at his home last weekend. Remember, these are young, healthy, professional athletes. Now, many players are isolating at their own homes, from their pregnant wives, from their children. This is one of the worst things I've ever gone through, one player told me. I'm not telling you all of this to exaggerate or promote fear-mongering. I tell you this because in the last year, sports have become a welcome distraction. And while we're all desperate to embrace normalcy, like the nearly 40,000 fans that packed the Texas Rangers ballpark last weekend, we're not in the clear yet. So many of us are getting vaccinated, and that's great, but this pandemic isn't over. As the NHL was forced to remind teams in a memo they sent last weekend, we need to stay vigilant.
What's amazing about the way teams position themselves for the NFL draft and the way they actually draft is how they utterly refuse to learn the lessons of draft history. All the machinations, all the hours spent analyzing this player, breaking down that player, when at the end of the day, this is to a large degree a crapshoot, as in your guess is as good as mine. It's like those cats and turtles who fill out the winning March Madness brackets, especially at quarterback, the position hardest to evaluate, and yet the one at which every team seems convinced they know exactly what they're doing. I mean, seriously, is Zach Wilson really better than Sam Darnold? Who knows? Maybe he's the next Johnny Unitas. Maybe he's the next Geno Smith. In 2017, the Bears traded 4 picks to move up 1 spot to draft Mitchell Trubisky at 2nd overall. They could have kept all those picks and taken Patrick Mahomes with room to spare. He went 10th. With the exception of the rare, very rare, almost impossibly rare sure thing, a la John Elway or Peyton Manning, you're probably better off using that top pick on an offensive lineman or linebacker. Late in the first round, after all, you can get an Aaron Rodgers. Or in the second, a Drew Brees. Or if you wait all the way until the 6th, Tom Brady. In the last 50 NFL drafts, 44 quarterbacks have been selected 1st, 2nd, or 3rd overall. And exactly two have gone on to win Super Bowls as the starters for the teams that drafted them. Troy Aikman and Peyton Manning.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.